Right from the get-go, I'm gonna go ahead and give you a sass warning. I'm very sassy this episode. You have been warned. Something that bugs the cuss out of me that usually comes up when our top minds of the game talk about how much better Japan is than the rest of the world is that they always say, we need to learn the game better. It's such a desolate say-nothing phrase that's used as though it were some kind of grandiose no tandem. It's not wrong, but it doesn't explain anything. That's like saying, we need to learn to play basketball better. Okay, but how? Well, I've noticed a major factor that really shows a better team from a worse team and also makes up a good portion of what separates a good team from being a great team. Which of course brings us to optimization. The official definition of optimization is defined as the action of making the best or most effective use of a situation or resource. The most common reference of optimization I usually hear in Splatoon is about gear builds, like putting in one sub of quick super jump to make you fly quite a bit faster, or how much protection you gain from one sub of ink res rather than having an almost non-existent and super diminished return on your 7th sub of swim speed up or something. I won't pretend that's not great and all, but I'm genuinely confused why we stop there about romanticizing gear builds and don't put nearly enough emphasis on optimized gameplay like all the time. Because there are so many little extra do's that players could be utilizing that they don't. For better or worse, one of the biggest components of optimized gameplay revolves around speed. So yes, I'm heavily implying that part of the reason you might not be as good at Splatoon as you'd like is because
you're too slow!
Whoa, Brad, I'm going as fast as I can. What do you mean? Well, allow me to unpack that further because there's a lot of aspects to account for in my previous statement. Please be aware that none of these are going to be a one-size-fits-all, as plenty of situations require specific remedies, as well as the fact individual player strengths and weaknesses will vary from person to person. Some people will be more naturally proficient in areas than others. But here are some reasons why your gameplay may not be optimal enough. Engagements. The way you try to approach an opponent isn't clean enough. It could be something as simple as not knowing your weapon's effective range and you're fishing for a splat right outside your range. And now that you've alerted the enemy to your presence, they've shifted to counterattack and may be so quick off the draw that you get splatted instead since you choked your preemptive attack. It's a food for thought throwback to the first episode, but if you're not careful, messing up your execution may just lead to your own execution. This is an admitted weakness for myself that I am still trying to work on to this day. Shooting first is very important, but you have to make sure you got yourself into the appropriate position quickly and then being able to aim properly to hit your target. And of course what I said may sound simple and obvious, but you have to realize how many small variables go into that basic idea. Awareness of the map to know whether or not you can move into a position to attack. Knowing where you want to place yourself. Being able to aim your weapon. And then trying to cover as many possible movement options your opponent may take, and even further having to adjust your aim to compensate. And messing up any one of those aspects severely hinders your odds of success, and not even accounting for the fact that your map awareness check was only a snapshot of the state of the game at the time that is constantly changing for and against you. There are so many plates you are required to spin all at the same time just to even be able to play the game. And we're not even going to mention how latency even further complicates all of that. Splatoon is hard, people, and don't let anyone tell you different. Know your limits. Another underrated aspect of fighting is knowing when to disengage. This game is so fast-paced that chip damage adds up so quickly, especially when bullets are flying and bombs are exploding and everything usually averages about 30 damage from our 100 health points. So if you've got a good team fight going, where others are able to contribute, getting in a quick 2-shots for about 60 damage is huge when you can do it safely and someone else can easily get in their nickels and dimes too. Like, there is nothing that satisfies quite like throwing a singular burst bomb at someone and landing the finishing blow. It always makes me feel like a Pokemon trainer and capturing them in a Pokeball. Don't settle. Something that I see more so apply to aspiring slayers, but can be relevant to anyone, is that you are way too comfortable trading with an enemy. The optimal fight is any battle that you can win, but also live to walk away from. Yeah, getting quads is super hype and all, but it all starts with a single splat. So many successes start from a singular victory, and landing the team quarter pounder is far too underrated. And I'm no math major, but if everyone on the team is able to beat just one other person, pretty sure the enemy gets wiped. Sometimes trades are the best thing you can hope for, but good pushes need sustained actions, and you can't do that if you're out of play. Getting a splat is just a single step towards the goal, but it shouldn't be the goal itself. Sometimes that single splat is the goal, as you really need a key person eliminated at a certain point in time. Callouts. Your reception and processing of information is too slow. While I'm mainly referring to a competitive setting utilizing voice chat, some of it can still apply to solo play as well. You may not be responding fast enough to what you see and or other callouts that are given. If a call for a weakened enemy is given, in order to be able to capitalize on their vulnerable state, you need to be in a relevant location where the gap can quickly be closed between you and your target. Take too long and the enemy has healed and your window is closed, and you may be heading into a bad time yourself. Not being able to deal with that person makes your team miss out on a +1 numbers advantage, which makes anything you want to do that extra bit easier. And if it was a callout mid 1v1, there's a chance a teammate of yours may even lose that engagement, setting your own side down a player. And this is something that may need to be acted upon in mere seconds. Another aspect that may be preventing you from having optimal callouts is that yours may be anywhere in the spectrum of too vague or too cluttered. I hear some voice chats where there's just one person absolutely dominating the airspace in a bad way, taking way too long to give out information and not giving others enough opportunity to give out their pieces to try and form a big picture of the battlefield. And I'll be the first to admit that callouts are not my strong suit. I'm a bit more vague than I'd like to be, and sometimes I'm too in the zone to where I don't even communicate my intentions very well. However, I try and balance that by being a good listener, and prioritizing what other people want to do or need help with, so that way I'm quick on response time and more likely to throw myself in 2v1 situations, as there is someone else near me or ahead of me that I can quickly catch up to and steal their splats to pad my KA. I mean, what? Who put that in the script? Weird. Anyway, as a very scrappy player, this is advantageous to me as I'm always looking for a fight, so when someone else calls out a threat, I will eagerly answer the call, as it's pretty much a go-ahead to assassinate them, and it's comfortable knowing there is at least another pair of eyes to back me up with the target. Hopefully your callouts don't fall into the category of outright useless. This would be a callout on people who give callout classics like, "I died," or "They got me." The truly aware and optimal player is always watching the top of their screen and can see these nifty little squid icons that show whether a player is active or on respawn, and it's pretty easy to see when give it to you. As I'm monitoring that, I can clearly see, "They got you," or "You're dead." So instead, the information you need to be conveying to your team is the enemy location to the best of your ability while you can see them on your screen. Asterisk. I asterisk because we're probably going to run into a split opinion, but "on my X" is not a good callout. I'm willing to yield some ground and say it's not a bad callout either, but it's okay at best, and this is a video on optimization where we should be striving for what's best. If you're not good at callouts and that's actually the best and quickest info you're able to give, then so be it. But make no mistake, it's a glorified verbal version of the generic ouch. It points the rest of your team in a general direction, but doesn't prepare them for what to deal with as adequately as possible. You're essentially saying, "Hey, Waldo got me in this area, but I'm not going to tell you what he's going to do next." And the respawn cam lasts upwards of about 6 seconds, and do you know how much damage Waldo can do if left unchecked? These are not the eyes of mercy. You know those moments when an enemy is on an absolute tear of your own team and someone's like, "They got me," and then another person says, "They got me too," and so on. Surely it would be in the best interest of your team to try and provide a slightly more descriptive warning, yeah? The best difference between callouts and no callouts is how much more specific communication can be, so why would you be satisfied watering it back down? But the true optimized callout is what teams I've been on have referred to as active callouts. Callouts that are given while you are alive compared to only chiming in after you got cooked. Speaking while playing isn't always easy, but there is a huge difference in the ability to actually act upon your own callouts, rather than completely leaving it up to the rest of your team to figure out a counter on their own. And last thing I'll say on callouts is, don't be that squid. Yeah, lag is super annoying to deal with, and maybe the first unexpected time it happens you can mention it, but you've gotta move on after that. Pointing it out excessively is a waste of airspace for more relevant information that will actually be able to help your team perform, and drawing attention to it doesn't make the lag ghosts go away. They cannot be exorcised with salt. Believe me, I've tried. Wow, that was a long one, so moving on to number 3. Match time. Each ranked mode match has a timer of 5 minutes, yeah? Well, that's not exactly all you should be thinking of a game as. You should be treating each game as having 5 minutes to set up your perfect play. Think about your best wins or quickest games. The results screen isn't filled with all that high of numbers, and without context wouldn't seem all that impressive. But that's because each member didn't get much time to bloat up extra splats and assists, and everything that was achieved had more impact and purpose. You want to be going for speed runs. The more time you take trying to win, the more likely your opponents will find an opportunity to make you lose. Number 4, special usage. To kinda go along with the previous one of match time, people talk about high quantities of specials that were able to be spammed, but from my point of view, who cares? It's such a distraction from what actually qualifies as playing a good game. Okay, great, you got 10 ballers, but how many of those were actually useful? Like, come on Luigi, 8 stingrays and you only got 1 assist? Get off Peach's back, man, you're better than that. I don't normally promote bullying, but the next time you see someone misguidedly proud of how high of a special count they were able to spam, shame them. This narrative needs to change. It is the literal opposite of optimal. What that actually means is how bad you were and how many specials you wasted and used rather uselessly to maybe win? Sure, sometimes using a special didn't quite work out, but at least put some effort into it? Don't just flaunt it because you got it. I am so sick and tired of seeing people use Tentamissiles without any real intent to make a play off of the openings they can provide because they or their teammates are not in a ready position to take advantage of the pressure they apply. But hey, I got 13 of them! Quantity over quality. That's cool, right? Turfing. You know that thing we should all be good at since we literally start the game with nothing but turf war, but then you go into a solo game of Splat Zones and realize a large chunk of players actually don't know how to paint a super obvious and highlighted part of the floor, and how much longer can I make this run-on sentence go before I finally run out of breath and need to gasp for air so I don't die? Yeah, let's go with that. First, let's talk about walls. This idea being underutilized I can kinda forgive since the game directly does a bad job at selling the usefulness of painting walls, as starting off with turf war makes it seem like a worthless waste of time as it won't contribute many if any points at the end of a game. But let me just say that in terms of engagements, painting walls saves lives. It adds a whole extra layer to your movement options as opposed to being limited to the floor space. On this guided tour across various maps, I'm going to be rocking Splattershot because burst bombs are awesome and technically help make it the Splattershot with the fastest movement options, and just pay attention to how easy they make wall painting and the amount of coverage they provide. So this whole time we've kind of been talking about optimization of your APS, your actions per second. So a con to wall painting is that it does take an action and it's towards turf you may or may not use, right? Well, let me reframe it to you like an RPG. You're spending that turn to provide movement buffs for your team. While on a competitive team, it's nice you can directly plan with your members which walls people specifically like to have painted. And you can even discuss this outside of the game so that way you can preemptively strategize how you want to approach a map. Which further optimizes your callouts as you can focus on anything else on the game as you've already decided on this beforehand. And if you're really consciously managing the wall real estate, you'll be giving debuffs to your opponent's movement speed by denying them direct access to a certain wall route, and therefore making them have to spend an action to returf taking it back. A seemingly minor inconvenience, right? Well, let me present to you a very important objective guaranteed to get a lot of traffic. The tower. AKA 4 moving walls. Isn't it convenient when you can just swim right up to the tower and get on? Sometimes you desperately need to get on the tower in a timely manner, which is why it's good to make sure you have as many sides of the tower painted your color as possible, letting your team get on from any side. Well, wouldn't it be more than mildly inconvenient if you needed to get on the tower, but you had to spend an action to be able to get on, putting you behind the time you needed to get on? Well, there's certainly ways to make that happen if you make sure the enemy side of the tower is not their color. Which side is the enemy side? Well, that depends on where on the track the tower is and where your opponents will be coming from. So it's best just to make sure you have every side your color, for as much ease of access or buffs for your team and debuffs for your opponents. Now that's not going to make or break every game of tower control, but I'm willing to admit I've lost more games than I'd like simply because I couldn't get on the tower right when I wanted to. And another thing you should pay attention to for how effective this will be is weapon matchups. I'd say shooters will have the least problem with this, but everyone else will have to spend a few frames and an action to repaint the tower, and depending on what state the game is in, those could be some precious seconds. This is important to me due to how much of a nuisance it is for my preferred weapon classes of rollers and blasters. But just think about the extremes. If you're playing against a Dynamo, a Hydra, or any other Splatlings, painting the tower walls becomes even more worth it, as it's even more of a timely hassle for them. So if you have time, it's worth taking the time to paint walls while you can afford it so it doesn't bite you in the butt later, especially if it hinders popular paths taken by the enemy. Also, a quick side note, you can optimize painting walls to cut off ease of access for the enemy team by simply painting a line along the top of a wall, so anyone climbing can't really cross. I'm petty, so I ruin the entire thing for them, but that's just me. And wall play is something that isn't super important to quite a few people, so you'll pretty much only have to paint walls once and you'll be set for the entire game, as the majority of players don't think that's worth taking away, let alone painting in the first place. And that's why it will be their loss, and for you, it's free real estate. Clam Blitz. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to be going too specific on the ways to optimize how to play Clam Blitz, but for a few quick tips on that, on average, every single member should always have at least 4 clams on them at all times. It's a single clam spawn's worth, so it's not hard to amass, and that way, should the team urgently need to make a ball, you collectively have enough on the team to be able to form at least one. For me personally, I'm not happy unless I have at least 8, but I'm an overachiever. The other optimal clam tactic is that 9 clams is the true magic number to be holding. It's the highest point value to be able to score 27 points worth if you get them all in, but it does take a lot of time. It's 1 clam away from being able to form a power clam, and it still keeps you from being directly detected by the entire enemy team. 9 clams is also the number you can juggle your 10th clam with, as you keep throwing the last clam in front of you to again prevent you from becoming an immediate target. There's just a lot of benefits from holding 9 clams. But what I really want to talk about Clam Blitz for is that it's a great mode to really highlight your optimization play. You have to manage so many things at once in terms of resources and offensive and defensive positioning. If your basket gets broken, how quickly can you clean up the enemy? Are you too slowly taking out one enemy at a time that another person shows up and the opposing team continuously cycles in as they please? Or are you quickly shutting down their push to mitigate the amount of points they score and giving you a slight head start to gather more clams and claim advantageous map positions for yourself? What I'm about to mention still applies to every mode, but Clam Blitz is the most chaotic that most easily, and incorrectly mind you, devolves into a team deathmatch. So being in a good enough state to prevent that from happening is a good thing, and the general notion for how to make a good push in Splatoon is to coordinate your specials and secure the objective, right? Does that seem accurate? Anyone want to fight me on that? You should, because I want to fight me on that. That's kid stuff. We are professionals around here. You know how we do on Bread's Food for Thoughts. We eat good here and turn common perception on its head. I described the quality of a good push, but the aspect of a great push is securing the objective without the need to even use your specials. And then you sustain that push by overwhelming the enemy with the specials you still have, as they try to get back in or having something to counter their special usage. Being able to outplay your opponent without even needing to use your best move is the true and optimal sign of strength. And let me be clear, that is by no means an easy feat. Your specials are there to help give you an advantage, so by all means use them as you see fit to your own benefit. But in the goal of striving to your highest play, that is a peak you should be aiming for. But with all that, I think we shall come to our conclusion. There are so many different things that can be optimized in your play, and they don't even have to be complicated. Even simple stuff like being able to climb up walls and over ledges without any misinputs to get you where you want to go on time, or taking advantage of sub-strafing to save a few frames and movement are great things to be proud of. The simple concept of movement has quite a rabbit hole of its own, but I'm not going to get into that on here as I'm trying to get out of this episode and get you on your way. The last thing I do want to show you are two plays that are similar, but one that is good play, and another that is almost darn near perfection, and I'm surprised I was able to pull it off. But the rule of Splatoon is, your mistakes are someone else's highlights. And here's that highlight for me.